Hello everyone and welcome to part 11 of the Basic Training Booster Pass Edition. Today we're going to cover everything you need to know to play KALAMARI Desert on 150cc. This is definitely one of the weirder tracks in the game, so let's dive on into the guide and check it out. We're going to be using what I will henceforth be referring to as the Slip and Slide build, which is basically just the usual try-hard build but replacing Bitty Buggy with Streetle for added traction. This is going to help us out a lot since this entire course is low traction desert sand. When the run begins, immediately start a wide left drift, and as soon as you build up the mini turbo, release it and start another left drift. For this drift, you want to keep it tight until just before you get into the off-road, and then widen it up and use your mushroom. If you did everything right, then you'll maintain your drift past the off-road. Keep holding down the hard right so that you can drag your Ultra Mini Turbo off the glider and then do some glider vectoring. Now this first 10 or so seconds of the run, and in particular the glider vectoring, cost me about a third of my attempts. Two things are likely to go wrong here, and both depend on your vectoring angle. The first is that you just run straight into the wall of the tunnel. The second is that you grind the wall too hard and lose all your height. Now when you land, you want to make sure to be holding down the drift button so that you can start a right drift immediately. Hang the turn kind of wide, because what you're going to want to do is after getting the mini turbo, immediately start a left drift. Tighten that drift up just enough so that you don't hit the off-road, and then start holding a hard right on the joystick until you get a mini turbo. This weird setup should help you to grab 2 of the coins from the first line, but if not, there are a lot of backup coins, so don't worry about it too much. After building up the mini turbo, do 2 right hops to realign yourself, since this is going to be faster than using the joystick to turn. Start a wide left drift just before getting onto the train tracks, build up a mini turbo while grabbing the coin, and then immediately right hop to release and start another left drift. Now I'm going to jump ahead just a bit here. The goal of the next sequence of steps is to get a super mini turbo and trick off of the final ramp on the track. This is by far one of the most obnoxious things I've ever tried to learn, so let's jump back and explain why. After passing the train tracks, we want to get a mini turbo, then do a right hop into a left drift and mini turbo trick off this ramp. It's very important to make sure that you're aiming for the coin on the right hand side of the ramp, because when you do the trick, it will allow you to take the following turn much tighter. We're going to land in a wide left drift and then basically just do what we did before by doing a right hop into another wide left drift. But after we build up the second mini turbo, we're going to do another right hop into a wide left drift, which should buy you enough time to build up the super mini turbo before the ramp. And for that final drift, you want to make sure that you're holding right the entire time. Now, this honestly doesn't look so bad when it works, but I promise you that finding a good setup for this was one of the most frustrating experiences I've had in this game so far. The problem is that it is actually faster to get the coin on the left-hand side of the ramp, but I've found that it becomes much harder to get a good setup for the Super Mini Turbo. Because what'll happen is you'll generally be too far to the right-hand side of the track when you land, and ultimately, your angle is going to be screwed up by the time you get to that second ramp like you can see here. If you're having trouble with this strategy, I've got an unlisted video that shows an easier way to play the track. You'll find alternate strategies for this awful ramp as well as the mushroom cut, so feel free to check that one out after you're done with this video if these strats are making you want to pull your hair out. I know they did for me. Anyways, that's enough pissing and moaning. Once we get on to lap 2, we're immediately going to start a wide left drift, tightening up when we pass the cactus. We're using our mushrooms in the same spot as before, but now since we don't need the coins, we can cut off even more of the off-road than before by using 2 mushrooms to get back onto the track. Just like on lap 1, we're going to do some glider vectoring, land in a right drift, and then do the 2 drift strat. But then immediately do a right hop into a left drift before getting onto the big ramp. You might be tempted to tighten up your drift a bit, but absolutely do not do that, because what we're going to do is mini turbo trick off the ramp and land in a left drift, and if you hold left for even a fraction of a second on that ramp, you're pretty much guaranteed to go into the off-road. Fortunately, the rest of the track is pretty straightforward for the most part. You're going to basically just hold right for the entirety of this drift to build up an ultra mini turbo. After getting to lap 3, start a left drift and try to stay between the wall and the metal railing here so that you don't run into the train. The timing for when you start this drift may need to be adjusted depending on what your pace is, since this train operates on a global cycle. Unfortunately, you gotta just kind of figure it out on your own, and chances are you're gonna fail at least a couple of attempts, so just be prepared for that. Now when coming out of the tunnel, hold a hard left to build up an Ultra Mini Turbo, and then the rest of the run plays out just like on lap 1. As far as the world record goes, there's not a whole lot to specifically point out. They use the Baby Peach try-hard build for the added mini turbos, but aside from that, the only real major difference in strategy is that they do motion glider instead of just normal glider vectoring like we did. But that's it for all the strats. Let's check out a full run while I talk a bit more about the track. Kalamari Desert is probably my least favorite track in Wave 2, with maybe the exception of Sky High Sunday. I don't necessarily think it's a badly designed course, but it's just incredibly weird to time trial. The turns after the train tracks are like just tight enough that it doesn't make sense to use your joystick to turn, but they're also really shallow so you can't easily build up a bunch of mini turbos. I can't think of any other tracks in the game where the optimal strategy is to literally just build up regular mini turbos over and over and over again on one turn. The coins are also really awkward on this track. That weird left drift that we use to grab 2 coins before the train tracks is probably one of the more unintuitive coin strats in the game, and the 2 coins before that awful final ramp also have a tendency to dance just out of range of your cart half the time. Now fortunately there are a ton of backup coins, so it's not really the end of the world if you miss any of them, but yeah, Kalamari Desert is just a track that isn't really offensive in and of itself. It's more that it just feels like it's a track that wasn't really designed to be in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which, since the booster course passes are all just tour ports anyways, I think is a pretty apt description, but that's a discussion for another video. The last thing that kinda irks me about this course is the music. They took that whistling tone from the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they replaced it with this really out-of-place brass for the first part, before transitioning into the whistle for the second part. If I had to guess why, it'd be because they wanted to avoid a lawsuit, but my god does it sound bad. I mean, maybe it's not actually bad, and I'm just crying over nostalgia, but either way, I feel like if you're going to be bringing back retro tracks into next-gen consoles, obviously you want to allow a new generation to experience the content, but I feel like at least part of the point is to excite the people who are fans of the original, and while the course isn't the worst thing in the world, it definitely fails to do that for me. And that's everything you need to know to play Kalamari Desert on 150cc. Like I said before, I wouldn't say the track is badly designed, but I still hate it all the same. The awkwardness of the course made it really hard to learn so that I could put a video together for you all. So if it helped you out, I'd really appreciate if you could click the thumbs up button and leave a comment to help increase the reach of this video. Thank you all very much for taking the time out of your day to do some basic training, and as always, I will see you in the next video.